so we discussed it all the way along what we were doing, you know, and how it would possibly relate and resonate with the other artist's work. So
it was really, I'm thinking of doing this. I mean, I guess the starting point is the fingers that we can talk about in a minute. But they were kind of, it wasn't like it was set in stone, but it was sort of fixed that I would make these, and they were already in process, and then we kind of worked around somehow. We found works that made sense.
It was very easy and very kind of fun, and like in a sense it was just like we were bouncing ideas off one another, not really in a collaborative way because we were just doing our own work, but kind of trying to make sure that they did have some resonance with each other.
We kind of agreed on everything, and we then realized that the space was actually pretty big, so we decided to not make things that are big, but play around with scale as well. I thought they would work in this situation because the flea market seems to have a lot of things that you're not 100% sure of the history of. So you find a lot of material here that probably came from buildings or came from insides of wherever, cinemas or aeroplanes or everything. The history is kind of not 100% clear. So I like this idea of these cut-off fingers where we're not overly sure where they started from. I mean, I kind of know where they started from, and I sort of decided to keep that information a little bit quiet, even though it's probably clear to a lot of people.
First I was thinking of doing 3, just primary colors to respond to the fingers, and then I decided later, after I'd already come up with that idea, to do 5 colors because I thought the apparatus made more interesting. And yeah, 5 fingers, I guess. And like it was anyways, I was thinking also a little bit of that piece of Gerhard Richter's, of those glass panels. I don't know what the piece is called, where they're tilted panels and they're playing in this kind of different angles. I chose 5 colors, 3 primary colors, and then green and orange secondary colors. So it can be viewed from both sides. It could be, obviously it could be installed in a way that they're all just vertical, or that would be up to the person, you know, exhibiting it or whatever. So it was meant to be kind of flexible in that way. It's funny because this whole painting practice of drip painting, pour paintings that I did, kind of came out of a fiction, because it came out of a large photographic work that I did called The Gifted Amateur, which is about a guy who's like maybe a dentist or a doctor or a professional from Vancouver who's just come back from New York after seeing Morris Lewis exhibition. And he's kind of inspired to sort of do these paintings himself in his living room. So the first one I did was as a prop for a photograph. And then when I showed the photograph, I made a series of small ones, and I continued making them. So I've done that several times with works where I've continued the work of the imaginary artist in the piece. In that case, so it was these drip paintings. So this kind of evolved into a sculpture out of a photograph in a way.
Kind of a flying guy as well, flying an owl.
It's kind of funny, actually.
Et on met les cales derrière en sécurité.
D'accord.
It's called hat toss, hat press. 2 parts. The hat toss is an action that I performed in my studio where I taped out an area 6 by 8 feet and then stood a distance away and threw my hat in to determine the placement of the hat, with the idea that I would make a sculptural piece later, that I would make 5 sculptural pieces, in which the hat was actually pressed, or the brim of the hat was pressed under a piece of heavy 1-inch steel, the same size as the area that I taped out of the floor.
Put it on and then when you come and pull it off. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's okay?
Yeah, yeah.
When you stuff an animal, the idea is that they look alive. Although it's nice to stuff them so they look dead. I mean, that's also quite funny. But it's clearly dead, but when you a taxidermy, it's their job to make the animal seem alive, however and whatever they do. But by adding this kind of an owl, because in its nature it can turn its head quite, not in a circle, but a long way round. So you have this idea that it's sort of almost real, but it's now kind of telling the time and turning once a minute. So it just becomes this strange clock. I mean, I guess like a cuckoo clock that would come out every hour, or maybe even every 15 minutes. But I often like this idea that the people have assumptions. I mean, it's always the case that when you make a certain amount of work in a certain way, that people assume that everything you do then is related to something else, or they can just accept it for what it is. So it's just it's a bass drum. It's just connected via a computer to a clock and a small motor that pulls the drum pedal down. So it just chimes the hours similar to a clock. And I guess music, it's about this rhythm and keeping time. So it's time that's connected to a clock rather than to like a song. For 60 minutes it's basically silent, and then it just comes to life every hour. So I'm sure plenty of people will come to see the show and think that it's broken. I mean, I like this idea as well, that it's sort of dormant, like a volcano, and then every hour you just get this, whatever it be, boom boom.
Came to me to make a sculptural component to the piece based on maybe one of the action shots, and I chose this one here. I made a coat stand to hold that coat in that position. It was fun to kind of take the photograph and try to freeze it and also in 3 dimensions, so you could sort of see that. And so it kind of came out, I guess things came out of this idea of the body in terms of his fingers, I suppose, as Jonathan's original idea, and then clothing and And these two pieces I thought were more about clothing. So I was kind of interested to make this kind of irrational looking sculpture structure that actually is a functional coat rack, but it holds a coat in this very absurd kind of action position. The other work, I guess, that I should talk about is the door,
Yeah.
which was kind of when Jonathan and I were talking about the show, he was...
You didn't do it specifically?
No, not specifically. That's a piece that already existed, I guess in the same way as the drum piece. And it kind of comes out of the music, kind of our interest in music, mutual interest in music. And he was talking about Morrissey in our earlier dialogue, and I guess the inspiration of the Lightbox piece with the negative. And I knew I had this piece, and I have not exhibited it actually very much. And I just thought in terms of, there's a connection from Morrissey back to Elvis in terms of stylistic, his fashion, his look, and knowing that it has a connection to Elvis gives it another dimension altogether. It's one of those pieces I think probably depends on knowing that. It's probably not so interesting otherwise. You might not, if you didn't know that it was solid silver too, you might. So it is like a large piece of jewelry, a crazy large piece of jewelry.